Hello, everyone. I'm Melanie Adamson. Welcome to our webinar, Defining Your Marketing Tech Stack. We are so happy to have you here today. I am a marketing strategist at Alder Co. We are a climate tech marketing firm that is driven by the purpose of advancing the adoption of climate technologies until they become universal. We envision clean tech systems embodied in every business operation around the world. From brand to scale, Alder collaborates with startups and mature, purpose-driven brands in search of the impact needed to address what we believe are generation's most urgent crises, our environment. Together with my partner, Bettina, we run Alder Agency. She leads all of Alder's marketing, business development, and sales, and advises clients on how to grow from brand to scale using content marketing and digital demand generation. Before joining Alder, Bettina led B2B marketing for global tech companies, building and managing teams and agencies across marketing, PR, public affairs, and internal communications. Bettina is also the Clean Tech Open's National Marketing Chair. One of the things that Bettina and I feel really strong about is creating a community, and we've done that with TOFU, and yes, it's marketing jargon for top of funnel. We thought we'd have a little fun with that, but we created TOFU, which is a climate tech marketing community through Substack newsletter that you will receive every 2 weeks if you join. We also have a Slack community where you can share your knowledge, ask questions, and this goes for everyone in marketing who is in climate tech, and also for those people who are climate tech CEOs who need to know more about marketing and need to scale their business. So please feel free to go out to alderagency.com to learn more about TOFU, and we're also going to put those links in the chat. Which brings me to another point, housekeeping. During the webinar, please add in your LinkedIn profile. We would love to connect with you, and everyone else in our community here on the webinar wants to connect with you. So put your LinkedIn profile in there. Also ask any question. This is a friendly environment where you should feel free to ask whatever questions are on your mind. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about our presenters. We have an amazing group of panelists today. I am so impressed with the content. First, we have Amanda Luchetti. She is the co-founder of Dayani, a UX design and innovation studio focused primarily on designing and building websites, apps, and other digital tools and experiences for climate companies. She's spent a majority of her career on the agency side, leading B2B and B2C marketing and digital product teams. Ted Dillon is Director of Marketing at Clean Energy Ventures, a VC firm investing in early-stage climate tech startups. Ted plays an operating role advising portfolio companies on marketing strategy and commercialization. Previously, Ted held several roles at clean energy-focused marketing consulting firm Captains of Industry, most recently as managing director. And finally, Sarah Kim. She is the VP of Marketing at Aurora Solar, a solar software provider on a mission to create a future of solar energy for all. As a marketer with a passion for social change, Sarah has built her career at the intersection of technology and impact, climate change, financial inclusion, and education. I'm going to hand it over to Bettina, who is going to introduce you to the topic and get our webinar started.
Thank you so much, Mel, and thanks everyone for being here. Welcome. We're so happy to have you. Mel has already invited you to put in the chat your LinkedIn details, but also let us know where you're dialing in from. We have a really diverse panel with Mel being up north in Portland, Ted is in Boston or near Boston, and then Amanda, Sarah, and I are in the Bay Area. So today we're here because MarTech is supposed to make our lives as marketers easier. It's supposed to improve our productivity, automate processes, give us better data. But then with more than 8,000 tools available on the market, just how do you know which ones to choose and which ones are going to be right for your climate tech company? And especially in climate tech, where we operate in such a niche industry with nascent technologies, in markets that are only just being created, we often face really long and complex sales cycles. So how do you know which technology is right for you? That's why we're so excited to have our panelists here today, because they're all going to add a different perspective on the topic. Amanda is really our tech expert who knows, the MarTech landscape probably better than anyone else on the panel. So she's going to talk about why MarTech is important and how it can benefit your role. Dillon talks from the perspective of advising very early stage startups, because as Mel mentioned, at Clean Energy Ventures, he gets to work with a lot of their portfolio companies. And then Sarah Kim, I don't know if you followed Aurora Solar on social, but they're really in such a steep growth curve and they're hiring like crazy. So this is really a live experience from a high growth climate tech company. So let's get started with Amanda.
Hi everyone, thanks Bettina and Mel. I'm really excited to be here with everybody. So yeah, let's break it down. Marketing tech stack. I want to make this fun. It truly at the core is a group of software services or technology-based tools that marketers and organizations use to run and improve their marketing operations throughout the customer life cycle, customer journey. What we want to do is take you from state to this to state. And I think that's where, why is a MarTech stack important? What does it allow you to do? So you could be resonating with some of the stuff in the from state where, things are time intensive and inefficient. Among your communications and your activities, you're manually doing marketing tasks. It's eating up all your time. You might be individually, nurturing a lead through an Excel doc. You're doing reactive marketing because you're not able to plan appropriately, because you're not getting the analytics in or any data in to appropriately, plan and to proactively communicate with your customer base. And you could be, having siloed data. And this happens a lot with larger companies that have a lot of different business units. And so all the data is siloed and you might have this fragmented view of the prospect or the customer. And it ultimately is like this sunk investment because you're spending money in advertising or marketing in some of these larger companies. And those customers or those prospective customers, that traffic is coming to you and you're not able to appropriately capture it or track it. So it truly becomes this sunk investment. So we want to get you to this to state, and this is why having a great marketing tech stack is so important. Ultimately, what you want to have is, improved, streamlined organizational workflows. Things are automated. Your life is getting easier. It's allowing you to spend time on strategic initiatives and really just freeing up that time for you. And then it's so important you're collecting data and you're getting feedback, and these tools should enable you to do that. It's going to allow you to optimize the campaigns you're running. It's going to allow you to make better decisions, not just for your marketing department, but as for your organization as a whole. And then personalization, it's a topic across everything right now. And you really want to have tools in place that allow you to do the personalization and gives you this holistic and integrated view of your customer, how that experience overall, and that it just provides you with the right info for your team to make decisions. And then that's going to allow you to scale and grow, and having all those things working together is really what makes a great marketing tech stack. Go to the next one. I love SpongeBob, so I felt this was very, very appropriate. But strategy first. Like, we got to focus on strategy and technology second. And I know Ted's going to go into this too a bit when he speaks, but yeah, the focus on getting your business, your marketing strategy set, have your goals in place, really having a grasp of, what is that ideal customer? What is their journey like? What are those different touch points with your company and with those people? And then from there, like, here are some steps you can take, to start figuring out, okay, how do I build a marketing tech stack? I think the first one that I think gets overlooked a lot is not having the right team in place from the very beginning. So if you have an opportunity, like, this doesn't just sit in the marketing team's camp. This should be a cross-functional and team effort. So it should be a person from marketing, your sales team, your customer service team, become best friends with your IT team. Like, all those people together are going to, they all have different needs, things that you might not see, and having that, opportunity to discuss what makes sense. And it's only going to allow you to build a appropriate tech stack from the beginning. Set a budget, really understand what you're working with as it pertains to costs and what you want to spend. I think there's like a stat floating around where the budget right now for marketers, like 30% is getting spent on, marketing tech tools. And figure out what makes them, sense for your organization. And then, define the needs and requirements of not just your internal teams, but like for your customers. Like, how might you show up for your customers? What do they need in order to, bring them down the sales cycle? Is there a chatbot that needs to be, that the sales team wants integrated, that makes sense for your organization, that is going to help with the customer experience and services? Really think about the needs at all these different touch points of that customer and what tool might fit for that. And something also very important is just when you're defining the needs and requirements, like, have a ideal sense of how you're going to manage your data. Do you have a data management plan? Make sure that your team is really holding hands on all of that. And then audit, identify what you have now, what you're hoping to have, figure out what gaps and pain points there are, really get a holistic understanding as to what you're looking for in a tool, or what you're looking to achieve. And then, research tools, compare, really focus on integration. There's so many tools out there. There's, as you saw in the invitation, like 8,000 plus MarTech tools. Like, don't get, persuaded by the newest, shiniest thing. Like, really focus on honestly streamlining and figuring out what things can integrate together, because it's only going to make your life easier, and you're going to be spending costs. You're not going to be doubling up in costs in certain areas. And then implement and document really is the last step. Come together with a plan of a roadmap as how you want to implement these different tools, and ensure that that you have documentation of the tools. Is there a visual you want to incorporate of how this technical stack works, who's owning what processes, and all of this? So it's really important to document this as you're going through this process. And then it's never going to be a one size fits all marketing tech stack. I think every company is different, every organization is different. So what might work for others won't work for you. So it's really important to know that, it's not a one size fits all. You're going to be constantly changing different tools, but know that it's a process. And so these are some foundational ones that are out there as things to consider as items as you're building out your technical stack, things you should have. Engagement, operations, and insights I've included, and it spans, obviously website and CMSs, like a WordPress or the customer relationship management software if you wanted to utilize the Salesforce, depending on your business size. Insights tools like what are you able to collect feedback on and garner information around your customer that enables you to do more awareness related activities. So all those things, I see these things as foundational elements to a lot of different technical stacks, regardless of the industry that you're in. And then just my last point here is that, and really important for other people to remember, that just like people, like we're all works in progress. Like your marketing tech stack is no different. You should be constantly optimizing and getting better. It's never going to be perfect, but you want to be in a place where you can constantly improve. So just know that this isn't the end all be all. Whatever you set, you're always going to get better. You're always going to learn more. And so the goal is that you're creating a system that's fluid enough for you to continue to move into the direction you're scaling. If you need to add in more tools, you're able to do so very seamlessly.
Thank you, Amanda. That's so insightful. And thank you for giving us this great overview of the topic today. You just mentioned that it's always a work in progress, and while you're implementing, you're also still learning. So that leads me to my first question, obviously with you being the expert on the panel, like, how did you learn what you have learned? And is there any insights or tips you can share with the audience of how they might get up to speed on some of these technologies?
I have learned, it's all by doing, really. It's all been an experience, doing my own research, being able to work with clients on this stuff and actually doing some of the work. I think what the beauty of it, I don't know every single tech tool. I think the beauty of it is that you can work on one client and it's very similar. Maybe it might be some similar items, but the tool you decide upon might be a completely different tool based on, let's say, what their budget was or what their goals are. So I think that you're able to learn a lot of different tools by working on, I've been able to, by working on a bunch of different clients. So it gives you a breadth of what's out there, and the stuff that's coming out, and also some of the challenges that some of these companies have, and what are some of the tools that work for certain company sizes or for a similar challenge. But it's all been through through the information through action. So learning by doing, what I would say is how I've gained my experience. So anyone can do it.
Oh, that's great to hear for everyone on the webinar. And you mentioned some of the challenges that you saw. So could you give us some insights into what were some of the major challenges that you saw that your clients were facing, that you were helping out with?
Yeah, there was one client I worked on previously that was a large B2B global company. It was a technology company, and their internal, they had 11 different business units, and they were sending out emails to, their data was siloed. And so they were sending out emails to different, each business unit was sending out emails to a certain group of audiences. And some of those audiences were getting pinged like 13 times in a month with emails. And so they had no purview into some of the other business units, what they were doing and who they were communicating with, and didn't realize that they were communicating to the same customers. So we started with, putting together an email governance program, or putting together a task force. And then we did like an email governance workshop and program with them, where it was getting all the business units together to figure out, okay, what does the governance look like for emailing our customers? Like, what are the rules that we should be abiding by? Where should this data be centralized? And going through that process. I mean, that's an example of a piece of this whole pie as to, I would say, one of the challenges that I've been able to come and work through with a client previously.
Okay, yeah, thank you. That's a great example, maybe for a later stage company that has those complex organizational setup. Okay, like to move on to Ted to give us your perspective, please.
Yeah, I'm happy to do it. So I thought I would talk about how does a lot of this apply to climate tech, and then how does a lot of this apply to early stage startups, right? So most of the startups that I'm engaging with are somewhere between 5 and 15 or 20 employees, so very early. And when we're thinking about marketing tech stacks in that scenario, sometimes it's tempting to think about what your organization is going to look like down the road, which is the right half here later, where you've got product marketing departments, growth marketing teams, large corporate marketing function, sales and operations. But most of the time that I'm engaging and helping portfolio companies think about these things, it's really just a generalist. and then there's a sales associate, and there's sometimes operations. So early on, setting a marketing tech foundation and setting your original stack, I think you have to think like that generalist that's going to have to put these tools together and use them to build some quick traction, but try to think about them in the context of what will come down the road and how you're setting that foundation. So as other team members come on, you're not having to do things a lot like rebuild your tech stack and push in whole new tools to replace existing tools. I mean, some of it's what Amanda's talked about having to be able to adapt and that these things will change consistently. But I think it's good to be able to try and set a foundation that you feel like can carry you for a while and will be able to expand as the team expands. I would also echo the point about sales and operations enablement, that in climate tech, it's a lot of B2B, heavy B2B, right? You'd be selling to utilities more often probably than most are going to be selling to something like an SMB, a small and medium-sized business. That requires a lot of different tools and a lot of different integration with sales than you get on the consumer product too, for example. So I think having a consensus amongst that team and making sure that the technology that you put in place for in most instances works across departments is really important. I think the example about that Amanda, you shared about having audiences being pinged by different email servers and different email services from different departments from the same company all the time is something I've definitely seen before. And I think if you work hard early on to set that foundation and trickle it into other departments and other groups within your team when you're small, you'll be able to keep that coordination as you start to become bigger. So it's important to think that way right now. Next slide. The three things that I'm thinking about when we're considering new platforms, and some of our portfolio companies start with a logo developed by, a brother-in-law's roommate, and others come with some kind of brand established and some kind of tools in place. But I'm always really thinking about these three things. So extendability, very much how long are we going to be able to have this tool, and can I start small and grow? Can it grow with me? So you're thinking about some of your major CRM platforms or CMSs and you're wanting to know, are you going to have to hop off those real quick? So for example, I see a lot of startups that are early stage, like at the accelerator incubator stage, who have websites on Squarespace or Wix or things like that. To me, that's not an extendable platform. I want you to get off of that and onto a CMS that is going to be simple for you to use as a small team and is going to be able to plug into a lot of your other tech stacks as you grow and expand. And so that's one kind of key piece that I'm thinking about often. Upkeep would be another one, and that has a lot more to do with, are you putting more tools in place than you need right now, but are you also setting yourself up to be able to go far with a team, right? So then what's the saying? I'm going to mess it up. Go short or go quick, go alone, go far, go together, right? And I think that's the tension and balance that I'm thinking about here, which is you may be able to do things in Excel quite quickly as an individual generalist, and that may be a very effective tool for right now. Yet, as soon as you add another marketer or add sales associates that need to engage with you more regularly, Excel is just going to stop working pretty quickly. And so you really have to make that judgment call, and there's not really a good answer across the board. It really depends on the scenario of when investing in a technology now and doing that extra upkeep is going to be worth it because of the team you're working on versus doing the very bootstrapped, whatever versatile tool you've got like Excel. And being able to do that quickly to get done what you want to do. So I think about reporting on analytics would be one of those. A lot of people early on want to do those things alone and pull links together into a PowerPoint versus once you start to have several pieces of tech stack, you really need something that's going to bring that together. I also think a lot about that in CRMs. So when do you really decide to use a CRM as a marketer? A lot of it has to do with when sales is going to start to use a CRM as a marketer. And I see this at a lot of early stage companies too, where even sales is getting managed by either a third tier CRM or getting basically managed manually, and understanding, when should you and the other side of the aisle being sales decide to step into a CRM in a meaningful way, knowing it's going to add some hours to your week to keep it up to date. But as you add 5 team members in the next 6 months, you really start to need that infrastructure in order to be successful in the things you're trying to do. And then the last one is cost. Always an important consideration, particularly in early stage climate tech, when budgets are small and marketing budgets are even smaller, right? There, we're thinking a lot about those same balances. Is when's the right moment to move from a free product to a paid product, or when's the right moment to decide to step up your subscriptions or expand your tiers, how do you think about cost in the products you pick, right? So do you go with a HubSpot and do email marketing through them, which is generally a paid service, or do you go with MailChimp and stick on the free tier as long as you can? Those are tricky questions sometimes at early stages when budgets are small. So we're always trying to keep those things in mind as we grow. Next slide. So I thought it'd be helpful to see some examples because every time I go to one of these webinars or panels, this one, but in general, I always have a hard time translating it to climate tech because I feel like, and I'm sure every industry says it's a very different business, but I feel like it's a very different business. So a couple examples here at different kind of audience stages. One would be B2B utility customers, which we've working with a lot now, where the sales cycle is long. The audience is a behemoth as a company and very multifaceted as stakeholders within that company. Think of B2B C&I, where you can see some level of complexity similar to what you get with utilities, but you also may see more like turnkey purchasing departments. And then something closer to an SMB, like maybe when you're engaging with home contractors, for example. So I think in each of these scenarios, to Amanda's earlier point, when thinking about your tech stack, you really have to understand the objectives and the important considerations in your marketing funnel first, and then assign technologies based on that. So on the utility side, I may be taking a more account-based strategy. I know the 100 biggest utilities in the country, or I know the 50 most important in the region where we're currently deploying. And the real challenge is, how do you track a 6-month to a 12-month sales cycle across a couple different people or across 50 different companies at once, right? And then how do you close that very large sale that may be focused on contracts and content that you could provide along the way in a more bespoke manner versus trying to do ads, for example. So there, borrowing from Amanda's great structure on engagement and insight and management, but I think that you said operations. Website and email would be a great foundation. I usually think about CRMs in these instances. It's important things to do, and a project management software, even if it's not something as simple as a Trello. And then basic insights. So insights that you can usually get for free because you have small sample sizes, right? So like a Google Analytics that will track website traffic, track downloads with a CRM that you can do pretty effectively for small numbers without having to estimate audiences, for example. Then on the CNI side, similarly, really trying to raise awareness amongst complex organizations, and then also just trying to nurture that sales cycle. But it might be a little bit more about trying to find those new customers and a little less about account-based marketing and knowing who your folks are and how you're going to go after them. So that's when I start to think about tech stack that includes things like ad buying, whether that's on a native platform or either buying a platform on top of that. I'm still thinking about email, but I'm starting to think about things that are a little bit more sophisticated in email than doing a monthly newsletter, starting to think about drip campaigns and otherwise. Similar on the management side, I'm usually seeing CRMs in these scenarios, and some kind of project management software starts to be more often integrated in these types of scenarios, and then similar outcomes for analytics. And then on the SMB side, where we're dealing with some more volume, raising awareness is still really important, but I think there's more content marketing and developing understanding. There's a lot more of those audiences who are lurking and who really need to be nurtured. And so creating the technology that allows you to do those things early in a way that's fairly cost effective can be really important. So I'm thinking about many of the things we're thinking about with CNI, but I'm also adding social listening or adding in different aspects to how ads integrate with email so that I can really do some more discovery, thinking about other insights tools that might give me a better sense using IP addresses and things like that of who folks are engaging with and who I'm talking to and who's downloading my content. And then at the bottom here, just examples of some of the tools. I don't want to really do a like compare and contrast on a bunch of tools out there, but this is a pretty standard suite, and I'm usually picking and choosing between this type of collection and maybe several others with an early stage climate tech company. So even if you're just selling to utility customers, having a HubSpot CRM set up, or if you're going to maybe do a pipe drive, it's really important. What I like about a lot of these tools too is most of them have a free tier. So early on, when you've got a limited marketing budget and you want to spend it on, in this market, I would say things like going to events and having a good trade show presence. You got to go to Distributech, or you got to go to SPI because that's where the sales team is going to be the most successful, and that's where you want to put your budget. Well, here's a bunch of free tools that you can put together right now that will give you that strong foundation. And then in 2 years, when you've raised another round of funding or have doubled your revenue and are still growing quickly, you can start to stack on those paid tiers of a lot of these platforms to get you to the next level of insights that you really need. That's just a little bit about how I think about it. I'm sure people have questions, and I'm happy to dive into those as needed.
That's great. I love how you broke that down into the different areas of climate tech, and also, you know, that level of prioritization that you just gave, you know, start kind of with a cost-effective tool and maybe prioritize events at the early stage and then start leveling up your tiers. I know that in our audience, we always have a lot of people who want to pivot into climate tech, who are maybe in, you know, related industries or completely different industries or in tech. So could you, and with your background, could you talk a little bit about like the difference between climate tech and maybe other industries?
Yeah, so I think I have other experience in healthcare and higher ed and some of those other areas. And I think as with any industry, you have to know the business and know where the people convene. I think that's always a barrier. So, you know, knowing what SPI, Solar Power International, and that it combined with Energy Storage North America, knowing those things, I think is part of getting into climate tech and being able to understand where groups are convening, because the people coming into climate tech is expanding dramatically, right? A lot more attention, a lot more money coming into the space. I think those are really great things, particularly on the climate tech side. I do think there are still, though, these small pockets of where people who have been here for a long time or where this industry aggregates, and knowing where those places are can be really important online and offline. So I think spending time researching and diving in, having conversations can be really a real benefit there. Other than that, I think it's a lot of the same principles that apply to any industry, doing marketing in any industry apply here, which is you want to be high touch and transparent and authentic with your audience. You know, you want to do marketing in a way that doesn't feel like marketing. I think that's certainly true in this space just as much as it is in others right now, where, you know, people, an old client used to say, our audience has a very high BS detector. And I think that's true for everybody these days. I think everybody feels that way. So the more and more you can do marketing that doesn't feel like marketing, and set up an ecosystem that allows you to do that at an appropriate scale over time is really important.
Okay, great. Could chat with you for hours, but conscious of time, so I want to move on to Sarah. Thank you, Ted. Next slide.
Great.
Hi, Sarah.
Great. Good morning. So I am excited to be on this panel talking specifically about climate tech companies that have reached a certain stage of growth and what tech looks like for a company our size. So I guess I should start with just a little background of, you know, our team and the company size and where we are, so that you get a sense of, you know, how does this translate to potentially where you are. So Aurora Solar, we are now year 8 of our operations as a company, and currently have, I cannot tell you exactly how many employees because it seems to change every day, but that should give you some sense of how fast things are moving. But I know that we were at about 100 early in January this year, and I believe we are now about over 200. So numbers are moving quite quickly, and currently on the marketing team, there's a team of about 10 plus 2 additional team members that have belonged to sort of other teams that are on loan to us, our designer and then our dev. We're a software platform, so all digital solution, and we power the solar industry. We help solar installers design and sell solar remotely. So as you can imagine, last year with COVID, things were definitely sort of on a tear, which was very sort of a fortunate and unexpected outcome for the entire industry, to be honest. It's a very old school industry, so it's interesting that we're talking about tech, because a lot of our customers are installers that, you know, maybe started 10 years ago. I started in the solar industry a decade ago. And at that time, you know, and still people are knocking on doors to sell solar. And so, you know, it's interesting how much technology is sort of behind the scenes to enable the selling of solar, which, you know, really seems sort of like an old movie at the time. But anyways, here we are. If I were better at making slides, I probably would have made this into a build slide, but at this stage of the company, we're sort of a big tech stack now and growing, as I believe Amanda had mentioned. Tech marketers are now spending 25–30% of their entire budget on tech, and so we're not there yet. But part of it is that we intentionally kept things slow initially because a lot of what Amanda was talking about, you need a team. Like, this stuff doesn't manage itself. I have the budget, that is absolutely correct, and I can absolutely sign those contracts with vendors, but there's only so many hours in a day, right? And so 10 people managing, I don't even know how many systems there are here, but this is just not even everything, right? So 10 people managing, like 50 systems, right? That's going to be our full-time job. So we don't want that. But I look at this as as sort of like a build slide, if you will. If you look all the way at the bottom, you see data activation and analysis. You need a foundation, data. That is the main thing, and that becomes later. It becomes a little bit of a pain point later on because it certainly, becomes more data than less data over time. And I'll talk about sort of my, reservations and challenges in dealing with this, but always start there, right? Like, what are the sources of data and where do they live? Of course, CRM, everybody has a CRM. Even smaller companies now, I would say, even in our own customers, we survey them and everybody has one or a Salesforce shop, not surprisingly. But there's a lot of other databases in a company this size where we have our own customer internal database that probably started as a spreadsheet and then became some sort of an SQL database. Then there's obviously every department has their own source of truth. So we'll get to why that becomes a problem later. Web and clickstream, sort of like that next stage up, is what are the tools and the sort of applications that are directly feeding that data pool. And then, of course, we're a digital company, where most of our marketing is digital, especially now with no events. So we have quite a big stack developing around marketing automation, of course, and but then other things too. Things like I never thought would even be a technology. Programmatic direct mail. Like, why is that a technology, right? Apparently it is. Now I can integrate it into Salesforce so that I could send, a box of cookies to a customer, right? And that all happens within a system. That is actually a technology. Some technologies, luckily, I'm hoping to just punt to our growing list of partners, our agencies on PR that may manage things like social monitoring and analytics. Our website development agency, of course, would be the ones managing our CMS and all of our, web tools. Our SEO agency would be managing the link building tools and all of the SEO tools. So, sometimes it's not that you have to own that tool, but you have to understand where it fits in and how it obviously supports your business. So, yeah, and then as the higher up we go in the stack, basically, the closer it is to the actual customer experience and the web experience that it provides. And of course, the ad tech system that obviously interacts directly at the very top of the funnel, the tofu layer that we're talking about. So, I think that's the fun stuff. And it's easy to get lost in the fun stuff, like these point solutions, like, oh, I want a video tool that makes animated characters, and I want this one platform that personalizes this thing or the other. And it really is like it's like a candy shop for us marketers out there. And it takes I think a bit of a discipline for the team to just think, okay, we can't do that right now because it doesn't quite serve one of our major needs. And above all else, is it just going to be an island? What you don't want is, these little islands of tools all over the place, because that would be a disaster. So I guess before moving off the slide, the biggest really thing is, I would say, as we're getting bigger, a lot of the tools that you don't see on this slide are tools that are owned by the sales ops team. I know both Ted and Amanda spoke about this, but there are other teams there, and they're building up an ecosystem of tech stack, and they obviously have to interact. So, and then ourselves, we're teams. How long do they stay, right? So if you're in a startup world, people are coming and going as stages of company evolves, right? The people that built sort of this early technology, they may not even be here. And I'm sure that's the case in all of your companies. You may have an intern who shows up in the summer and suggested a SEO tool very heavily, right? They did the social media, they're not here anymore. So this ecosystem is constantly moving and it's very dynamic. So you have to make sure that it doesn't, that it doesn't sort of build out to be like a Frankenstein, Frankenstack, I think is the term that the industry uses. So anyway, let's go to the next slide and I'll just, I know I start talking about some of these challenges, just to sort of synthesize and maybe give some hope here as well, is that what got you here fundamentally just may not get you to wherever your next stage is, right? And I'm not just talking about 8 years down the road. That's a long time, right? 10 years ago, did we even have the internet? I mean, yeah, we did. But, I think about like 20 years ago in the marketing I did, it's like, I might as well have been like writing messages out in like stone and, doing smoke signals. So, definitely whatever happened 10 years ago won't help. But even like 3 years ago, there's just so many new things. I just don't, can't keep up. So it just will not get you there. As a startup, you're always trying new channels. More channels means more data means more integration. All of these things could potentially cause a headache. So, you need good partners and you need good, governance and sort of policies or, best practices well in advance. More teams, RevOps, I think I talked about them before. Increasingly more companies our size are looking at building a single team that supports all of the revenue operations. And we are no different. So I am really looking at our partners on the revenue operations team to really guide us in the technology implementation and keep this stack sort of healthy as possible. I mentioned the agencies and all the partners. Sometimes there's also channel partners, right? That also need some sort of custom pathway through all of this technology. And so also something to be mindful of. And then when it comes to climate tech, obviously that's why we're here today. I think there is a difference, right? Ted mentioned, yeah, we are different. And then we're further different in what part of this ecosystem we're in, obviously. I represent, one part of that industry. And in the solar world, one of the things I notice is how different segmentation is and how difficult it can be. The data that most tech companies, many of us have worked in other tech sectors. Typically, if you're selling B2B in tech, you're selling to the IT person or you're selling to the marketer or the sales rep. Here, like, who is your salesperson and how do you validate that they are the right, they are the right buyer? And how do you get data into your system that helps you validate your correct segmentation of these inbound leads? That's an incredibly challenging problem depending on which industry you're in. But I would say climate tech, that is one of the challenges. And that colors everything, because if your segmentation data is off, then you're maybe channeling leads and opportunities over to the wrong teams. That can slow down your sales velocity. There's a lot of impact in understanding the impact of sort of data enrichment and segmentation work. The other thing that I noticed is that, things that work for everybody else, everyone wants to sell me intent data these days. I would love to buy intent data. If you are out here listening and you have intent data that can help a solar marketer out, call me. So that is an issue because there's just fundamentally, not enough of our buyers and cases. And then, talent gap. The thing I want to mention there is that, look, 10 years ago when I started in the solar world, it was like career death to be in climate tech, right? I mean, it just, it is not where it is today. Luckily, there's a lot more investment, as Ted mentioned, and the industry is bringing in, attracting talent from the likes of you who are on this call, right? And thank God, it took me 9 to 10 months to find a demand gen director of my team, because we're looking for that technical depth together with the passion for this space. And that has traditionally been very difficult to find. And so, at our stage, especially, we're really looking for that technical depth together with this passion. And I would say it's a difficult thing. Luckily, I see a wave of change. There are a lot more people interested in coming into the industry and bringing their sort of like generalized technical talents into the space, which is a really great thing. So I'll leave you on that positive note and hand it back to Bettina.
Yeah, thank you. And I love that. And that's one of the reasons why we're doing these webinars is, to fill that funnel with people who want to pivot into climate tech. I don't know if everyone else felt like this, but I certainly did. My head was spinning when I looked at your tech stack. And I think it's quite, yeah, it's quite fascinating what you've built. And thank you so much for sharing that. That's incredible insight. And you, like everyone else said, it's a moving beast. It keeps growing, it keeps evolving. So once you get to a stage where you feel like you need to add another capability or another tool, what are your criteria to evaluate which one's the right one, and how do you choose from those 8,000 in the market?
I just throw a dart. Usually works pretty well. No, it is a long process, and depending on obviously what technology more so, right? The more sort of bottom of that chart, the more important it is, because it's data. It's fundamental to not just our team, but many more teams and many more systems that data feeds into. So we take a lot more care into the foundational stuff, and then we're much more sort of, playful, about the top layers where these sort of applications, point solutions, let's give it a try. If it doesn't work for us, we know we can take it out of this, stack, but at least it gives us an opportunity to try something new. So, there is a sort of a scorecard and a long process and a vendor evaluation for the lower stack, but, we also want to be, consistently trying things and experimenting with some of the newer stuff. So. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Yeah, that's an interesting perspective to have at least that flexibility at the top. Thank you, Sarah. I have a few questions or two that I want to go back to the whole panel with. We've seen, even at Ted's level, early stage, you're already looking at a good handful of tools. And then obviously we have Sarah's tech stack, which is mind-boggling, frankly. So I'd like to get your perspective on the data integration. So how do you get those tools to talk to each other, or how do you get that single view of the customer that's so important to get data to then develop marketing insights from? And it's really a question for the whole panel. Or maybe if there's not a one answer to that question, it's like, what are the elements or the criteria you apply to kind of solve that puzzle?
I nominate Amanda.
Yeah, I know it's complex. I think that, there's a lot of ways to go about it. There's, especially on obviously on the backend side. There's a DMP, and you'll see these names, the data management platform, a DMP. There's a CDP, which is a customer data platform. I've had some experience in the DMP space. I think ultimately you are having a single hub view. I think you can get a lot of that done through like a customer data platform, like a platform that is feeding, it's a central piece of this that is feeding a lot of this information. I think a lot of the complexity though does come into play, like if you're selling products and you need to have, if there's product data as well that you need to integrate in with this. But ideally it is, there is a central hub, and you're choosing tools that are going to feed into into a central location in order for you to actually, if you're doing progressive profiling and you're building out like this specific person in your database, like it is going to this one place. And then like, if they're interacting on your site or if they're interacting in other areas, that data is also getting sent to the central place. So then, okay, you want to personalize. Okay, you can actually start to personalize. That's an area that it's really complex. I partner with like my software engineers and like my technical leads to kind of like suss through all of this. But I think at the end of the day, like having trying to get a central data platform to do all of this is crucial. I know with Sarah's, it's super complex because you saw I think Sarah, on your technical stack, you had different areas of where the data is living. So it's like, how do you try to streamline it into a so you can get that single view?
Okay. Thank you, Amanda.
I don't know if anybody else has anything else to add.
I think at the early stages, we're really looking for a single platform to try and do that, and then try to plug as many things into that as I can. right? So yeah, most of the companies that I'm working with and spending a lot of time at that are the seed or Series A size aren't ready for that type of data management. And so we're usually looking at something like a CRM and saying, can we get creative with something like a Zapier or otherwise, that it's going to allow us to take a diverse set of data from places that might change pretty quickly over time and just plug that into a single source of truth. That tends to be where most of our companies end up starting. And then somewhere along the way, I think to Sarah's point, somebody gets hired who's taken company from stage 3 to stage 4, and they say, okay, so now we can't go any further with this. We now need to think about data management platforms that are a little bit more sophisticated.
Okay, great. And then, as marketing teams, we obviously, we are driving growth for our companies and we work hand in hand with sales. So what are some of the key tools where that allows that marketing and sales collaboration, that lead nurturing that you mentioned, Amanda? What would you say are some of the key tech stack tools that enable that, or what other groups of technologies you should be looking at?
There's a lot of it depends too on types of scorecards that you set. So what is for your team's what's a marketing qualified lead, and then when does it become a sales qualified lead? And working with your sales team to understand, okay, if I'm creating a scorecard, what does that handoff, where does that handoff takes place? I know through experience, I've used a platform through Salesforce where they have a marketing tool called Pardot, if people are familiar with that. But that helps, basically some of the marketing initiatives that you're driving, whether it be demand gen initiatives, you're able to basically pull in specific data. So if you have UTM parameters or other parameters that you have, or source codes that you've created, that whether it be in hidden fields that pass through, let's say your website, and it hits a threshold of, they've visited, or they clicked this, they visited this, that's going to up their score. They're going to get passed over to sales for further nurturing. Those are the types of tools that I've used in the past in order to do that. But it definitely takes your marketing and your sales teams, or what Sarah and both types saying, if you have an ops, like a rev ops and your marketing ops, to work through that and have a plan.
Okay, well, we're getting a bunch of questions from the audience, which is amazing. Thank you. Please keep popping them into the chat and we'll try and get to them. I think the first one was just around terminology. So Sarah, you mentioned intent data. Could you just explain what that is for those in the audience who haven't worked with that?
Yes. Basically, it's, the search for new products, right? Your customers are looking before they ever contact you, before they ever even show up on your website or ever engage with you. They're searching out there, right? Because they have intent, right? They're maybe they don't even know what their problem is, but they're sort of researching, what is the problem? What does the space look like? What are the possible solutions? What are approaches, right? So they're out there in the internet, but you don't know because they're out there and they're not on your website and they haven't given you your contact information. So how do you sort of move your this is like pre-tofu almost, right? It's like, how do we get to them even before they ever reach out to us or interact with us? And that is intent data. And what that is basically a whole network of websites out there, right, that have content that people are searching for, and they go there and interact with that data. It just so not happens not to be your own website. So there are aggregators who are able to expose that to you so that you know well in advance before anyone else knows that they are even in the market for. And it's incredibly important as your market gets bigger, because how do you narrow down and prioritize the right opportunities, right? You want to be in touch with the people that are in fact in market for your product today. So yeah.
Okay, great.
Like creepy data.
Yeah, I think it's fascinating. But it's also helpful to know that you've tried it and that it doesn't actually work in your industry, or not yet, at least. So
yeah, don't rule it out for your specific area of climate tech. I'm just saying, so far we have not been successful, but doesn't mean I've given up.
Okay. So a question from about what are good database solutions for early startups trying to move from Excel or Notion, Coda, or Airtable solutions?
Those are all good. I mean, I love Notion and Airtable and Coda. we're a Notion shop, so but those are great because that way you don't have to have your team trained up on being a SQL manager, right? You don't need to hire a data scientist. So if you can get your entire team comfortable with something like Notion or Airtable, I think you should be great. Ted or
no, I second that. I think Airtable's become pretty popular, and there's a lot of versatility there that just isn't in other platforms. So it's a great place to start.
Any examples where, because I'm always fascinated how these general tools can then become marketing tools. Do you have any examples that you can share? How people use it?
We used it as a project management tool before we eventually moved over to Monday. I sort of miss Notion days, actually, even from a project management tool, which is not what it's designed for, but we use it as a knowledge base primarily. So we use it as a sales enablement knowledge base where all of the content that you need to provide to sales teams there. We use it for managing at least our big planning, right? These are the Q4 campaigns that we're going to run, and here's the campaign brief. So I think it can be used quite well, just like Excel.
Yeah, I personally use Monday. Way back when Monday first came out, I used it as a PM tool, and now it's like blown up into all these different things. And I was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea that they now offer all these different tools on top of it.
Yep.
And I see Airtable used in a lot of interesting ways too. So, conducting surveys and then plug right in Airtable is a great one. I also see lots of people use it for content marketing. So just exposing those tables and lists that they make into something that's a searchable database for others is, like in this space, has become a very great tool. I've seen a lot of companies do that really successfully.
No, yeah, that's a great example.
Yeah, I love that. Okay, question. If the business is at the beginning, what are the first steps? So maybe reiterating some of the content that maybe people have missed when they didn't join right at the beginning. What's kind of a thought process?
Yeah, I think to Amanda's point, you got to get the right team in the right room. So I think that's really important to set your plan, and then understanding your audience and putting the basic pieces in place that you think are going to be extendable. So I usually look at that and I say, do we have a website that's going to serve our purposes for the next 12 to 18 months, and can it extend beyond that? So that's often important, because if you're going to go out there and start doing active marketing, things like having places to host your content gets really important, and it gets really hard if you're on some of those very, very, very basic tools. And then I think CRM is a great thing to be able to spin up, just so that everything is being collected in a central repository. And I think people are talking about HubSpot in here. I think that's a great place to start. Pipedrive is another one. Copper is some other that folks use on a pretty regular basis. So I would say those two things first. And then also claiming your digital real estate, but that's not really marketing tech stack. As I see a lot of companies that I start engaging with, they just haven't done that. They haven't gone to all the social media networks, and they haven't gone to all the different tools that are out there and just claim their usernames. And so if you're really starting at the beginning, I think that's an important thing to do. Even if you're not going to use it, you just want to own that space.
Yeah, very important. Any other tips? Okay. Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
I don't know. Again, it's not a tech tip, but just getting out into all the communities out there online and hearing the voice of the customer, being really there, active, contributing, and sort of listening, I think is a really important first step.
Okay, thank you. We had a question which is quite specific, and I can't comment on that because I'm a PC and Windows user, but if you're an Apple house and you only use Mac computers, but you need a CRM, are there any considerations for like Mac only technologies, or any recommendations, or are they all platform agnostic and web-based?
Yeah. I would say I don't think it matters, actually, depending here. I mean, I haven't had an experience of that where like if I used a Mac or PC, if that dictated the CRM I was utilizing, because typically is either it's cloud-based or I'm online utilizing it, versus it being like I'm using it on my actual in my computer, like my Mac or my PC. So I haven't had that experience. I don't know if anybody else has.
Okay, Cool, that's helpful. Thank you. Question to the panel, but maybe also for the rest of the audience. What are people using to manage photos, videos for marketing, sales, agency, and partner use? I looked into digital asset management platforms, but they are pricey and feel overkill for a small team. Very good one. I love that one.
Yeah.
Everyone's always struggling with that, asset management.
We don't have a solution yet. We haven't invested in a dam yet either, but I think I think the biggest problem has been trying to find even good creatives. Like, have you noticed how many bad solar panel photos there are out in the world?
Photography is top notch.
Yeah, it's the worst. Our design team just really has an allergic reaction to panels on photos. So, you know, it's a big challenge. I know that there are some tagging tools out there to basically allow you to use your Google Drive with tag management of assets. It's a cheaper, you know, approach, and it's, you know, it's a good way to get started. Helps you categorize things before you even move into a dam. So I would recommend that as possible.
Yeah, I second that. I see portfolio companies do that on Dropbox a lot, just to have a place to store things, and or sometimes hopping onto an agency's management system. So they'll do that for creative and, you know, after photo shoots and things like that. So that could be helpful. I don't think it's a good long-term solution, which is why we tend to push towards Dropbox. But yeah, I think that's, until you have many departments, I think trying to pull content for different dissociated purposes, the type of tagging that Sarah's talking about works great.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree with you both.
Yeah, I remember trying to do it with SharePoint in-house, and that was a nightmare, but I think SharePoint has improved over time, so don't want to bash Microsoft here. Okay, any other questions from the audience? Also feel free to unmute yourself and just shout or pop it into the chat. Oh, any recommended names for tagging solutions?
Me again.
Oh. I mean, I think Ted was recommending just using the Dropbox core tech, but you know, you could also, there's also, yeah, we looked at one, so it's like a Google Drive thing, Digitile, I think.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. Anyone else? Mel, do you have any questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the kind of team and tech integration, because I think, Sarah, you alluded to it, you know, now you have a team of 10 plus, and then you have agencies. How do you also like assess who's gonna manage these tools? And how does that, because our last webinar was actually about how to build a winning marketing team in climate tech. So I guess that kind of flows into it. So what are your considerations when you look at your talent within your team and the tech stack that you have in-house?
Yeah, I guess fundamentally marketing's still very focused on, well, organized around functions, right, and channels. So sometimes that's just a natural follow on, right, from the fact, you know, our social media manager would of course manage most of the social media tools, and our, you know, digital marketing team tends to manage all of the more data platforms, you know, manage anything that's sort of data governance oriented. Larger companies, of course, you know, we have ops teams and a revenue ops team that has a dedicated marketing ops person who would be our, you know, main partner in managing the marketing automation system, ensuring data integrity, hygiene, and just flows across multiple systems. So yeah, I mean, so far there hasn't been too many technologies where, you know, where you think like, who should be managing this? It's, you know, fewer people managing it better, making sure you set those roles and, you know, on the systems, you know, like I see HubSpot come up quite a lot, right? We probably didn't do that soon enough. So then you start having, you know, half the company on the platform, and sometimes they enter data that they shouldn't. And so make sure you lock those systems down.
Anyone else wants to comment? Who owns the training then? Like, is that the vendor, or do you do that in-house, or, you know, how do you make sure that everyone knows how to use, like you said, a CRM system properly and put in the right data objects and attributes?
I mean, the early stage, it's definitely the head of marketing. I mean, I think there's almost as much important communication that needs to happen internally at a growing startup as there is externally, right? Making sure that people are on the same page with how things work and what the processes are so you can scale them appropriately is really critical. It also changes pretty frequently. So having those regular updates and conversations, I think, is an important thing to do. Especially when you're adding new platforms, when you're adding new team members, all those things I think require a lot of regular coordination. So something like Sarah's talking about, where you have a Notion that you're keeping up to date on a regular basis, or things like a help desk, those are important training tools too, so that you can really maintain that training and just level of understanding of how the system works. I see that's where most things fall down, in my opinion, is when people just don't understand how those connections are made or don't understand where they are in a certain process or a certain customer journey or workflow, and they just revert to intuition instead of understanding the system and how it works.
Yeah, it all comes back down to communication. Don't we love that as marketers? We just got one final question from the audience, which I'd like to take, and then we'll move to the fun part of these webinars, which is our round of quick fire questions, where we'd also like everyone in the audience to chime in the chat. Last question that just came in was from Christopher. When migrating to an SQL database, what are some challenges to look out for from a data integrity perspective? My partners love Notion, but it can make data engineering difficult because they can edit and add data types, information, etc.
I think that's a governance issue more than anything else, you know. Yeah, I mean, it's sort of, this is probably beyond the scope of this to talk about migrating to a SQL database, but it sounds like you're a data engineer, Christopher. And yeah, I mean, maybe you can come to an understanding with the teams that are actively using the likes of Notion to just have a nomenclature and some sort of governance document ahead of that time. It's always good if you can come to an understanding way in advance of having a lot of data in the first place, right? If you're starting out and you're in that place, like, that's the time to act.
No, and setting, yeah, appropriate fields and yeah, no, totally, Sarah, what you were saying.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Round of quick fire questions. So I'm going to read out the beginning of a sentence, and you guys just shout out how you would finish that sentence, or sort of the first answer that comes to mind. Okay, on a scale from 1 being beginner to 10 being an expert, I'd rate my tech savviness as...
You just put the answer in, right?
Yeah, you can shout it out and everyone else just put it in the chat.
7 or an 8, maybe.
Yeah, 6, 7. I don't know.
I don't know you're allowed to answer it that way, Amanda.
I know, yeah. I'm not an engineer, but I mean, yeah, like
yeah, I guess you know, depending on where, ad tech probably more like 8, but probably the rest of it more between 6 and 7.
Okay. Something which is probably good for the audience. Do you think Excel or Airtable are valid tech stack tools?
I say, yeah, I say no to Excel. I say Airtable potentially.
Whether it's yes or no, people are going to start there.
No. Oh no. I don't know. It's hard to not love Excel. I don't know. I just love Excel.
A debate.
I'm going to keep it for everything.
Okay. The one tech stack tool I can't live without is
Slack.
Oh my God. Slack is ruining my life.
Oh, I love it. So much better than having to do email though.
It's true. I'm not sure. Somehow the level of Slack has gone up, but we all still have a ton of emails, right?
Oh no.
Okay, what's your favorite then, Sarah?
Oh God, I guess Google Analytics.
Okay. Okay, Ted?
It's hard. I mean, I think a CRM for companies I'm engaging with, they got to get on the CRM.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm
Mel?
thinking mine is personal.
Oh, yours is personal? I guess the one I'm hot on right now is I use TweetDeck a lot, which I didn't really
Oh,
do.
yes.
I'm a big
Mine
fan.
is
A
personal.
great investment.
Companies use CRM or CMS, but yeah, personal Slack.
Okay. I really love HubSpot. I'm amazed what it can do. So, okay. I wish I had a tool that did.
Okay.
Aggregated news and push it to company website. It's not a good one out there.
Okay, cool. I hate it when tools
Don't integrate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I love it. When vendors tell me, oh, this definitely integrates out of the box. And then like 7 weeks later, my data analysts are trying every which way to, make it work. So, yeah.
Okay. Okay, last one. If I could start all over again, I would.
Yes, I thought about this.
Data.
Yeah, I guess related to, I would make sure that there's a centralized team of people who all are allowed to have budget, together have to come to sort of like a council to decide what they're buying and whether all the other teams sort of agree that that is the right thing to do, because after a while it's too late. So it's sort of related. Ted?
Sales integration. It's too often they go siloed really quickly and they need to come back together later. And if they just stuck together, see a lot more success.
What was it? I missed the first bit.
Oh,
Sorry.
Sales integration. So make
sales.
the marketing and sales teams are really closely aligned. Like should be called the same team, right? And customer success really counts in there too, but it's too often it goes like this and then it's just a mess to bring them back together.
Yeah, great. Well, that was fun. Thank you so much. Thank you for everyone who chimed in the chat. And I'm going to hand back over to Mel.
All right, everyone, thank you for attending today. We will send you the chat and the slides and a recording of this event to your email. And one of the things that Bettina and I love to do too is, meet new startups or meet new companies who are having problems. We will put a Calendly invite in our email out to you, and we are happy to chat with you for 30 minutes about any problems you may be having. But we look forward to talking to you and stay in touch. Thank you and have a great day.